Hi everyone, this is Brady. I think here's where we left off last time about this planet explosion animation. So we basically have done all parts of animation, and today we're going to finalize everything and go to texturing. Before we go into super detail, I would like to wrap up again about what happens in this series of tutorial. So although this tree looks kind of complex, but you can basically separate them into three parts. The first part is about the structure of pieces and the scaling of its core. And the second part is about its light streak hanging around. And the third part is about the camera shaking. Basically, the usage of nodes are super repetitive. Several things when it's object ID key, vector wiggle, random vector, random Euler, and the vector mass, and most importantly, object transform output, so on and so forth. It's basically, I would say it's not very complicated, honestly speaking. It looks like complicated at the first hand, but if you really understand that, I think they're easy. Another important thing I would like to mention is basically all the control goes to in this empty. The only thing that I don't like at this moment is about that the location X does not mean I'm controlling the location X. You probably need a text editor to take some notes about what does the location X mean, location Y mean, location Z, or scale X, scale Y, something like that. But if you have done that, basically, I don't think you need to go to the tree anymore. It's kind of procedural. You can just change the value with all these keyframes. And you can even use the graph editor. And you can even use the graph editor to adjust all these kind of curves if you don't like them very much. I think it's very good visualization and good way to change the value and so on. So there are several other things we can potentially do. Like sometimes in my first version, and also actually the second version, is sometimes I think as all pieces break apart, they turns to be too small, and sometimes I want them to enlarge a little bit, just to make the entire view nicer. So one thing you can eventually do is obviously just enable the scale and put the scale Z to the socket and animate the scale Z. So this is another way of customization. Just a little bit so that you can see the planet better. So anyway, it does not really matter. Other thing, yeah, I think the basic animation is done. You can tweak the values. So let's go to the shading. I hope you to be aware that we have two sockets, one is outside and the other is inside. So you can really tweak all these. So let's kind of make it a dark color. So now we have a Jupiter. And for the light streak, I'm just calling a light streak. I'm just putting a emission shader. The value high, and I can change the setting of ambient occlusion, spring, even refraction. Actually, this value does not really matter in this kind of thing, but I still like to turn them on. And for the core, just another emission shader. So I think we've done the basic parts. Some other things that we can do is to actually create a kind of volume. One is I need to make this, I want to make a kind of star thing, so I need a star background. The way to make such kind of background is kind of easy, is emission shader. and we take a Voronoi texture. We can plug the color in and make it just 500. And we also need a color ramp. So the reason I didn't use the word is because I have camera shaking. So if I use the word, for example, and then if I play the animation, you can see the word does not change with view, and this is not something I'd like to do. So that's why I'm not using word. Instead, I'm just using an object for the actual background. Yeah, so another thing we can actually do in all these cases is I need to create a volume matrix. There are a lot of tutorials on the internet, on YouTube channel, talking about how to make nebula kind of scene. And there are even some people who came up with nebula generator. It spends maybe about $15. So you could buy them if you don't wish to do all this kind of complicated stuff. And actually there's some free project file on the internet talking about them. Simple nebula saying you can download them as well. I will post some reference link in the description so you can check on them. They are actually very interesting. Here, for the designing purposes, because I don't want to have a super fancy nebula which distract the people from the planet explosion. So instead, I'm just going to do a super simple principal volume with noise texture. So I probably put the color into density, color ramp. So if we turn down the darkness, then you can see, then it finally looks like this. You can increase this scale of noise. So far it does not look like everything which is very special. But you can add some more lights in this volume. So I will turn lights into, and turn this light super high to blue. And duplicate this to blue. So you can get kind of idea, and turn down this. Yeah, I think you can change a lot of things depending on your needs, and I suppose people can do even better than I do. Also, a thing I hope you to realize is actually the volumetric settings. So the tile size lower the better, but it also put a lot of stress in your machine, so be cautious with that. I'm using a very poor laptop, so I probably will not do this. I think I need to really change this. Yes, it's plugged in. I think I need to really change the scale as it animates. So let's do that. So because now all these pieces becomes too small, which is very how should I say, not that interesting. So maybe just increase a little bit, 1.5. I don't think people will actually realize it actually in larger size, but it does not really matter, right? So basically this is the animation, and again you can change the color of lights depending on need, something like that. I think this is good enough. I would also like to turn down the balloon a little bit so that it looks kind of more focused instead of just everything white. Also put the light in. Something like this. I think this is good enough. You can also add a area light. I'm going to turn the 90 degrees. So just to shine, and I will make it kind of orange. This is probably too much. I think the volume is too dense. So I think this is good enough. So just to kind of make kind of interesting shading of this planet. Exploding that. I think this is basically done. Here's one thing that we need to do is about this transition of this core to make it a kind of black hole. I'm actually not that, I actually don't understand what actually happens in this scene, but whatever. So we need to make a color ramp, a noise texture, and put it into factors, cut it into colors. So now everything basically looks kind of white. But if I turn this black, then it looks like kind of transition. So this is what you can work with. So basically what you need to do is to keyframe this position value and it goes to 200. And keyframe the position. So now our animation has been basically done here. You can also change a lot of other settings, like control the keyframes better, graph editor, so on and so forth. Not much mystery actually. If I were to say this is really not much mystery. Turn down the scales. 15 should be better. So just for previewing. Yeah, I think that's it. Maybe faster. Yeah, I think this is basically done. Here also some other things you can work. So some people proposed actually a gradient. A kind of this light has been disappeared. It's doable, but in my perspective, it will be better if everything goes straight out beyond the scene. But if you would like to do that, some idea is basically, let me think, kind of gradient texture, and you can put that linear color ramp. Also mix RGB. Take the color and try to effect this X value, and you can rotate that somehow. So we can go to the most initial object so you can see everything better. So now let's look at this initial streak. And just try to change this x value. You can have a kind of gradient object, and if you put that into ease, then it's fine. But I think this is really ugly. Oh no, this is actually different. In general, I don't think it's anywhere a good idea if I'm shrinking them. But it depends on needs, so it might be okay, alright. It just looks like something like this. So I think that's it. Anyway, I think this is a very basic thing to learn. Also, I don't know whether you are aware, in the description, at the end of the description, I posted a series, basically a list talking about the important nodes that I have used in this project. So you can review these nodes to understand, whether I really know this function, so that you can utilize all these nodes in a completely different project. I hope you learn all these nodes well enough that not only to replicate this entire tutorial, but also be able to use all these ideas to create your own project.